There is absolutely no doubt that how somebody, looked after their personal life is affects how they show up at work.
We need to reframe our unconscious mind's determinant that all these demands on us constitute a lion. We need to reframe it so we can actually bring it back into perspective. This deadline at work doesn't constitute a lion.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo. I'm back like I've never left. It is my greatest honor today to welcome the brilliant Sue Fuller-Good. Sue Fuller-Good is all about helping women and men and women who find that they lack vibrancy, just like the person I have in studio, my friend here, lacks vibrancy today. I won't tell you who. I'm joking. And really wants to have more health, happiness, and success. Isn't that all we want? Their problem lies in their overvalue of work and success and undervaluing of well-being. The result is that their health is suffering. They need support in the health domain. They want to get over their pain and energy drain. Sue's companies, the Energy Incubator and Body Brilliance, empower people to claim the happiness, health, and resolve that is their birthright by helping them to heal their bodies, reframe their thinking, and connect with their innate purpose. So uses integrated physiotherapy, posture work, movement, mindfulness, coaching, speaking, and writing so that her clients can feel effortlessly efficacious and infectiously energized. So what a great honor it is to have you, Sue. Good morning.
Good morning, Siphiwe. I'm so happy to be here and share some ideas with your listeners.
How are you feeling this morning? Are you feeling energized?
I'm feeling vibrant and alive today. Thank you.
That is so great. So for our listeners on Organizational Behavior with Siphiwe Moyo, who might not know you, who might not have heard about you, how do you describe Sue?
Well, I am a mixed bag of many, many different offerings. And that's not who I am, but that's what I do. Who I am is a passionate person who really, really believes that we could actually all feel great and we could actually be performing at our best if we were just given the tools and the insight and if we just had the awareness to be able to do that. And so what I do is to bring awareness and insight and knowledge and tools and strategies to people in organizations and in the private domain, and in so doing help people to try to change the way that they feel and the way that they operate in the world.
The issue of energy and how I feel. I don't know, man, but there was a time, I think about this a lot. There was a time I could feel good unintentionally. So there was a time in my 20s that feeling good, being vibrant was almost automatic. And now in my 40s, it feels like I have to be very intentional about what I do in order to feel energized. Is that normal?
I think there's so many demands on our bodies, on our attention, on our focus, and on our nervous systems all the time. And so it really is difficult to thrive. And thriving is about making lots and lots of little choices in the direction of well-being. And each and every one of those little choices constructs the feeling of well-being for you. So if one choice isn't badly made or erroneously made, then well-being is going to elude you.
Absolutely. I don't know if you might have seen this. There was an article by Adam Grant many years ago. A few years ago, actually, it was either during COVID or just after COVID, where I think he was describing the feeling of being meh or languishing. And so many people resonated with that article. So many people are feeling meh, they're feeling like they're languishing. Even the concept of thriving is one that they can't even comprehend, particularly in the workplace. People are feeling like, Work is always going to be a drag. So I'm really, really looking forward to our conversation. So just rewind a little bit. Can you share your journey from like physiotherapy, you're a physiotherapist, to becoming this multidimensional well-being expert? How did that come about?
Well, thank you for that question. I would love to really say I have just literally played the cards as the cards have arrived in my lap each time, or in my hands each time. And I studied physiotherapy, and I went straight overseas to work in England. And one of my very first jobs that I got was to work in the National Health Service in England with the dying elderly. And I met there a gentleman who literally changed the course of my life. His name was Sid. And he was an old man who had literally got the worst case of peripheral vascular disease that I'd ever seen, and had lost both his legs above the knee to literally gangrene, because he'd smoked and drunken so much in his life.
Sure.
And I got to hold his hand in his dying moments, and I listened to him lamenting about how he wished he could have lived his life differently, about how he looked back over his life and he had so many regrets. And I was 21 years old, and I looked at this man and I thought, I have to share this with everybody I get to meet in my life, and I have to live every day of my life informed by this knowledge that it's too late when you get to the end of your life. You literally want to be deciding every day, how do you want to live this precious life? And you want to be taking care of yourself, your mind, your body, and your soul every day. You can't wait for the December holiday. You have to wait for, you have to do it every single day. And it really informed my journey. So I started off working in sports medicine because I'm a big sports woman myself. And very quickly, my receptionist said to me, what on earth do you do in there that everybody walks out crying? And it wasn't that I was hurting everybody so much. It was that actually our conversations were delving into the other aspects of their lives and into the other contributory factors. Sure. So very quickly, I sold my very actually successful physiotherapy practice, which had 6 physios and a dietitian and a podiatrist, and it was a full-on pulsing well-being center. I sold that and went off and did my master's in balance, and I started to study much deeper. I became a life coach. I studied chronic pain, and I looked into women's health and became a sexual health counselor. And I really expanded my tools so that I could offer much, much more to my patients in the form of helping them change the things that might have contributed to causing the injuries and pain that they were suffering from. And then I started working with high-level corporate executives and C-suite executives, and slowly but surely they would say to me, can you come and do this for my organization? Can you come and do this for my execs? And before I knew what had happened, I'd moved into the speaking and facilitating domain as well. I've practiced mindfulness my whole life. I've been really, really interested in the effects of being able to develop a level of awareness and mindful attention with my brain. I was lucky enough to actually study that through Harvard. And I started teaching it in Leeuwkop prison to prisoners. And I was sitting in a restaurant one day when a guy came walking up to me, and he said, I know you won't recognize me because I look completely different to the last time you saw me. But actually, I'm one of the guys that you taught mindfulness to in Leeuwkop prison. And look at me now. These tools that you gave me.
I can just imagine the impact that would have had on you.
Jeepers. And how? I mean, I was absolutely stupefied to see that he was now standing upright. Sure. He had a presence. He had a real joy in his heart, which certainly wasn't there when the last time I had seen him. And that made me realize that actually these tools were so important. They had to be taught to anybody who would listen. So
I like that very much, Sue, because I think human beings are multidimensional by nature. And even though our podcast is really mostly focused at work, there is absolutely no doubt that how somebody, looked after their personal life is affects how they show up at work. There's no doubt about it. So really, really, and you also integrate the nervous system regulation in some of your work. Can you tell me what that actually means? Because I hear that a lot. One of my friends loves saying this. I'm even afraid of asking him what it means. This song is so good for my nervous system. No, but I don't even know what to say, so I just keep quiet. Can you explain what that means?
Well, I can't explain exactly what your friend means because that you'd have to ask him, but I can tell you what I mean. So basically, our nervous systems control our bodies, and all our organs are controlled by our autonomic nervous system. That's the nervous system that helps us on an unconscious level. And then our obviously central nervous system helps us on a conscious level. If I want to lift my arm or I want to smile or speak, that's my central nervous system that's operating, and it helps us to sense what's going on in the outside world. So really, it's the autonomic nervous system that your friend is referring to, I'm sure. That's the nervous system that reads the environment and prepares a response that will keep us safe and alive in the world. So if we feel under threat, our nervous system will detect the threat and will prepare an appropriate response. And that is usually the very popularized fight or flight response, but it could also be a freeze response. So if the fight and flight response hasn't managed to keep us safe, then we will be susceptible to going into a freeze state where it's almost like our system is playing dead. It's when the brakes are asserted by the nervous system in order to keep you alive, so that you don't burst a head gasket, if you like. And so the nervous system, that's the sympathetic nervous system that gets us ready for an emergency. But the system was designed whereby the sympathetic nervous system would arouse the body and prepare us to fight or flee. And then the parasympathetic nervous system would calm us back down again and bring us back to a calm state, so that we would be able to return to our normal function. But what happens in the world is that we're under so much threat all the time. We're under so much stress, so much attention demand, that our nervous system becomes upregulated and aroused into a state of fight or flight. And then it gets stuck there. And the parasympathetic nervous system can't bring us back down into a state of calm, into rest and digest. And so our system starts to become damaged and we can't function there. And so your friend is saying that this music, and he's absolutely right, has the power to activate his parasympathetic nervous system and bring it back down from that state of fight and flight into a calmer state.
So then what would be the common signs of nervous system dysregulation? And I guess what is the influence of regulating it on our overall health and well-being?
Wow. Okay, so there are many, many signs, and different people would show these signs in different proportions, different patterns. But if we look at the mind, you would feel slightly disorientated, you would feel unfocused, you might have tunnel vision, and not be able to see all the things that are going on around you, but only be able to see what's directly in front of you. You would be speeded up, doing everything super fast. You'd be hyper vigilant, anxious. You would have a bit of ADHD, and you would have a complete inability to relax. sense that you just couldn't calm down and couldn't relax yourself, that's when people often start using self-medication in the form of alcohol or drugs or something like that to try and bring themselves back to a state of calm. In the body, you would have sleep disturbances, you'd feel fatigued, you'd feel constantly on edge, you would be irritable. You might have irritable bowel syndrome, migraine headaches or pain of some sort. You might have flushing in your face, and you might have sensory sensitivity, a raised heart rate, dizziness, nausea, a lot of the signs and symptoms that people are suffering from today out there in the world.
I can just imagine our listeners and viewers self-diagnosing at the moment. Oh my God.
Exactly. And go, yes, tick, 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 I've got those. And it's a horrible way to live. It feels terrible. So anything that we can do to bring that upregulation, I call it, or dysregulation, as you call it, back to a state of calm, down-regulating it back to normal is very important. You know, the system was designed really, really intricately that, let's say, in the savannah, looking for foraging for berries or food to eat or trying to catch an animal to feed our families, and then we were attacked by a lion, we would go into a really hyper-aroused state and be upregulated. That would be completely normal. And then when the lion had gone away and we got into a cave and managed to put a boulder in the front of the cave entrance, then we would come back to a state of calm.
And unfortunately, our bodies still think we're in that cycle, right? And
absolutely, because the mortgage that's got to be paid and the school fees and the constant political challenge and disaster and deadlines at work and constantly feeling like people are judging you and making, deciding whether you're good enough for the job and feeling like you're not good enough, all of that constitutes a lion. And so people are feeling like they have literally a lion chasing them all the time.
Well, and I think that's the perfect description, because in the context of on that savannah, that kind of response was very helpful. So that if I'm not hyper aroused, then there's a possibility that I won't be able to, save myself from the lion. And now there is no lion, but I'm feeling like this all the time. So firstly, are there any practical techniques to then quiet this mind and regulate this nervous system that you're talking about?
I think that's the $1 million question, because, and there are so many aspects. So I'm going to try and parse it down and make it simple. Firstly, we need to reframe our unconscious mind's determinant that all these demands on us constitute a lion. We need to reframe it so we can actually bring it back into perspective. This deadline at work doesn't constitute a lion. Our life isn't actually under threat. So that's step number one. And we can only do that by actually becoming conscious of what our mind is thinking at any one time. Recognizing that we are not our thoughts and our thoughts are not facts, but actually that we can be the observer of the data that's going on in our head. And we can actually look at that data and say, well, that's a load of nonsense. That's not true. That's catastrophized. And we can actually become the evaluator of that data that's going on in our head.
Some kind of a psychological or emotional distance.
Exactly right, Sipiwe. That's exactly, actually literally feeling like you're outside and being on a fly on the wall of your own brain with all its data that goes on. And that data is there to protect you. Your brain is trying to give you all that information so that you can keep yourself alive and safe in the world. But actually, for the most part, most of it is not useful or constructive in any way. So creating the space, reevaluating those thoughts and recognizing that a lot of it can just be let go of. It's not worthy of your attention. is step number one. Step number two is to actually deliberately and on purpose bring your mind from the narrative circuit where it's just bringing in data, cascades of data, and literally putting it onto a direct circuit whereby you're actually paying attention to something that's happening in the moment. Something like, for example, you can use your breath, where you actually watch your breath or you actually feel the experience of your breath. Or you can bring it onto your sensory system, the sounds that you can hear, some music like your friend is doing, actually allowing yourself to really listen to the music and allow yourself to enjoy that music. Or you can use any one of the senses or your sensory system. So you can use any sensation that's happening in the present moment as an anchor for yourself. And that's what we really want to try and train people to do, is to bring attention out of the narrative circuit at times on purpose into the direct circuit, so that they can practice being in the present moment and actually allowing the brain to relax, because all it needs to focus on right now is something in this present moment that can be an anchor for it. The mind will, of course, wander off, and then you just have to keep practicing bringing it back over and over again, with kindness, with gentleness, with compassion, because that's what the mind is designed to do, and bringing it back with deliberate intent, so that you can train it to and help it to get fit for the skill of paying attention to the present moment, rather than being in this narrative circuit all the time.
You know what you've just done for me, Sue, and I don't know if there's any other step after that, but what you've just done for me is contextualize both mindfulness and I guess meditation. I think I've always heard that meditation, for example, is an aspect of mindfulness, but I think I didn't understand the context of why we're doing that, in the context of, I guess, reframing and then being mindful about what I feel and bringing your mind to the present. And I think many of our listeners will probably have that aha moment as to what is the context in which we meditate, what is the reason in which we learn mindfulness. I guess that has become very clear for me.
I'm so glad, because so many people tick that box. Oh, I've done my mindfulness for the day. I've done my meditation. And I'm doing my meditation. I'm doing my exercise. I'm eating well. And all of those things are wonderful and integral to creating well-being. And I haven't had time to go into all the many, many steps that are involved. But it's not just to do the tick box exercise. It's about trying to live more mindfully. It's about trying to pay attention to what's going on in your mind and your nervous system and your body on a regular basis throughout the day. So you can't just say, I've done it for the day, good, now I can go off and be mindless the rest of the day and spin myself into orbit, so that the tight spiral of my nervous system can be driving the bus all day long. You need to be peppering your life with these techniques all day long.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is integrate this into your normal work, because no matter how much you've spent 30 minutes in the morning, maybe through your meditation, if your nervous system is unregulated during the day at 2 p.m. just before that meeting, it really does not matter what you did at 8. You need these small bouts of exercises or whatever you can do during the day to bring it back again.
Exactly right. And if you want to be able to sleep tonight, then you can't, do your meditation in the morning and then hope that that's going to filter into your sleep tonight. The nervous system needs to be calmed on a regular basis throughout the day and brought back into, you need to bring up your parasympathetic function so that you are toggling, I call it, from stress into calm, back to stress, back to calm, and that your system is remaining flexible, adaptive, and elastic the way it was designed to be all day long.
I want to make a segue into, I guess in the workplace, impact on what we are chatting about now, on workplace well-being. In your experience, how does this chat that we're having around nervous system regulation affect productivity and relationships in the workplace? Because I don't know. I've always found that I'm a kind person generally, but under stress, there is something about the way I show up that I don't like about me. And I'm assuming that happens a lot in the workplace.
Yeah, great question, Sipiwe, really, because, if you are feeling irritable, which you will be if your nervous system is dysregulated, you'll be hyper aroused, and every sound and every stimulant will be exaggerated. And the brain's doing that in order to protect you from the lion, remember? So if you go into a meeting and you're feeling like that, on edge, hyper irritable, then it doesn't take a lot to set you off and trigger you. And your ability to make sure that you're using all your brain areas, including your prefrontal cortex, which is the area that you really need to engage in healthy relationships. If you're in a hyper-aroused state, your brain is going to literally shut down some of the brain areas that are not required for an emergency. And you don't need to build relationships and problem solve complex problems when you're about to be eaten up by a lion. So those functions are deemed unnecessary, and the blood supplied to those areas of the brain are diminished, so that you can send the blood to the areas that need to save your life. So if you're going into a really important meeting or trying to build relationships with your team and your fellow executives or whoever it is, then you really need to have all your brain functions on board, including your prefrontal cortex. So you need to be able to send as much blood as you can to that part of your brain, which you will not do if you're in a hyper-aroused state. So apart from feeling extremely irritable, you're also going to be hypervigilant, which is going to make you feel like other people are out to get you. It's going to make you feel like other people are threatening you. You're not going to feel safe and secure. You're going to feel like you need to be aware all the time and scanning the room for threats and for criticisms and things like that. So that's very damaging to relationship building. And apart from that, your focus, as we said, will be diminished. You will be unable to focus because the mind wants to take in every piece of information. It can't focus down on this particular thing that you're trying to work on. So your productivity is going to be really poor.
Sounds good. It sounds like leaders in organizations should really, really care about the stuff that we're talking about today, because it impacts workplace relationships. It impacts all the outcomes they want, like productivity and performance. So maybe just briefly, and I think many organizations can get in contact with you should they want more detail. But briefly, what are some of the strategies that organizations can implement, therefore, to support employees in managing this stress and managing this nervous system imbalance?
Well, I think the first thing I'd like to say is that we are designed as people to co-regulate on one another. So you and I are having this conversation. You are picking up my nervous system and I am picking up yours, and we are regulating on one another. So I think what's really essential for organizations is that they build a culture where calm and literally well-being of mind, body, and spirit is integral to the culture. It's not okay to just tick the box and say, okay, we've done our well-being, fabulous, let's move on to more important things. It's literally about building a culture where this is in the thinking and in the planning for everybody. And you can't learn to swim by reading a manual. You need a coach. You need somebody to actually stand by while you're in the pool, or hold you in the pool and teach you how to do it. So I really do believe that this stuff needs to be facilitated and taught by somebody who really not just understands it, but somebody who actually practices it and has been practicing it for years. Some of my training, a lot of my training, in fact, almost all of my training has required me to go and spend months and months and months training my own nervous system before I can even vaguely hope to help somebody else with theirs. So I do believe that we need to build these cultures. I think we need proper coaches and teachers to help teach people to do this. And then we need to be really kind and supportive to one another in the workplace. And I know this is often not the way that workplaces work and function. I was coaching a woman who was in crisis on Saturday morning, and she was telling me that in her office, if you get to work 1 minute past 7:30, everybody looks at you and goes, and starts judging you, and they offer you absolutely no support. They just throw you into the absolutely deepest end and try to see if you can float, because the idea is that if you can float in a deep swimming pool out there in the workplace, then you'll be able to handle any occurrence that happens with clients. And I think that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. And I really, really urge anybody from an organization who's listening to this to really understand that nobody is functioning optimally like that. You're not getting the best out of anybody. And the problem is that you are teaching people to be dysfunctional rather than to be resilient. Training people by being harsh and uncompassionate and judgmental on them is actually training them to dissociate from themselves. And that is leading to nervous system upregulation or dysregulation. And so I'm really saying that really what we need is supportive work environments where it's safe to show up and be yourself, not necessarily a dithering, blundering heap of nerves, but to actually say, today I'm not myself, I'm not feeling great today, and to have the support of your workplace so that your very best self can emerge out of this, out of your work day, and they can get the best out of your brain.
Absolutely. I think this trauma-based leadership style, we suffered, so that you must suffer as well. When we were candidate attorneys or when we were apprenticed, we used to do that, and it's like, is it really necessary for getting the best out of people? If you throw me in the pool, I probably will survive, and the right word is survive, but I won't thrive. And I think we want organizations where people can thrive. Now, let's talk about.
And I'm not suggesting that we turn everybody into weak and fragile, maladaptive people. Not at all. But actually, we set up a system whereby they can actually explore the length and breadth and depth of themselves. And honestly, in my life, I have done some pretty hairy and hectic things. 8-day trail events, running across the Alps, and riding across the desert in northeastern Ethiopia, and various things that I've done to really push myself to the absolute limit, but in a safe way, so that my nervous system can be calm and regulated, and then I can find the real resilience that lies within myself, and the real creativity and ability that's inherent within myself. And I'm not any different to any of your listeners. We all have that absolute wealth within ourselves, but we have to create the safety in order to find the real strength that we have. So it's not going to turn people into fragile Gen Z types who are just going to quit at the drop of the hat. And please don't take offense if you're a Gen Z. I have 2 children who are Gen Zs, and we argue about this at length. It's not that Gen Zs are non-resilient. It's that sometimes they are not willing to go in and do the hard yards because they've seen what it's done to their parents, and they're saying, I'm not having that for my life, thank you very much. But we don't want to swing the pendulum all the way too far to the other side. We want to find the middle ground, what I call the sweet spot, somewhere in the middle.
My daughter calls it wasted resilience, says my generation has this wasted resilience, that there's no reason why I should be resilient about water and electricity. That should be given so that I can use my resilience elsewhere. I'm so glad you mentioned some of the personal stories. You've also shared some personal stories about overcoming your own challenges around your mountain accident and so on. How did the nervous system regulation play a role in that? Maybe just briefly.
Gosh, well, for those who don't know, I had a really big accident 2.5 years ago where I fell from the top of Cathedral Peak. I fell 60 meters, which is the equivalent of 16 floors down a mountain. And I would say that my nervous system was literally the reason that happened to me. So even despite all that I'd learned over the years, I was living in a state in my own life of driving and striving. I wanted to be the very best I could be in as a physio, as a coach, as a teacher, as an author, as a speaker, as a blah, 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 blah. And at the same time, run a family and be a single parent. And I was running so fast on this treadmill. I just couldn't slow myself down and I couldn't stop. And so I literally threw myself off a mountain to stop myself. And so I think my nervous system got me into the mess I got into, and got me into that fractured, broken, damaged mess. And then my nervous system could reset, and I slowly rebuilt my whole self and my way of coping. And I'm a completely different person than I was before that disastrous accident. And I'm so grateful to it.
I love that. And I think for people who might not know, it's not as if you've moved from that state to this person who has like one appointment every day and you just, the rest of the day you're just cruising. You are still busy, but that consciousness, I think it's helping you showing up. So we're not advocating for these types of workplaces, as you say, where people are fragile, where there are not deadlines anymore, because I guess sometimes the conversations are like all kumbaya, as if we are not interested in performance and well-being and profit. And those are not mutually exclusive. We are trying to advocate in this podcast.
Absolutely. To be honest, on the outside, very little has changed. In fact, I mean, these are all the things that I preached long before this happened to me. I've just understood them at a slightly deeper and more intimate level myself, and taken the use of them to a deeper level. So on the surface, nothing's changed. I still work 10, 11 hours a day, and I still work with high-level clients all over the world. Nothing has changed from that perspective. And I really want people to understand that this work is about helping you to function at your best sustainably, so that you are not vulnerable to jumping off mountains or suffering burnout or suddenly having a calamity that takes you down at the knees that you can't deal with. Because, divorce, death, moving house, these things exist and they happen out there in the world. Change at work, mergers and takeovers in businesses, etc. These things are realities in the world, and you can't live with kumbaya because you have to love life the way it shows up, and life will show up. Even if you're having a calm time now, for sure, there's an uncalm time waiting for you, because that's how life goes. And these tools are really to help you be your best sustainably in those difficult moments, as well as in the easy moments.
Love that, Sue. As we nudge ourselves towards the close, I love that so much. As you were using the word sustainably, I was just imagining the spike that comes after a blood sugar spike, which is always followed by a crash. And the ideas that you have is let's just create sustainable energy for people so that they are showing up on a more sustainable basis. And I guess that probably might explain the sweet spot concept you have in your book. I think you said you talk about the sweet spot and the 11 domains of health. And we don't have to go into the book, and people can get the book after this. It's called The Sweet Spot and the Sweet Spot. But could you just explain briefly what the concept of the sweet spot is? And of course, many people can go to the book or chat to you more about it.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you for asking. So the sweet spot is really about finding that absolute middle ground in everything, not the extreme of this or that, not black and white thinking that it's either this or that, but recognizing that somewhere in the middle is the right way to be. You can't be totally driven. You need to be driven and accepting of yourself at the same time, and find that sweet spot somewhere in the middle, where sometimes you can be closer to the driven side, but there also has to be some times where you're closer to the accepting and calm side. So somewhere in the sweet spot, which is quite a big area, is where you need to be. And absolutely every single concept, every single quality, if you like, that you could think of can be broken down in this very same way, to finding that middle ground in it, finding that absolute moderate, but adaptable and mobile and flexible sweet spot. Does that explain it?
It explains it perfectly. And I was wondering if on the 11 domains of health, which we can't mention all of them because, of time, could you maybe just help me understand what are some of these domains? And I'm assuming that's where we find the sweet spot, balancing some of these domains, which I can just imagine it's actually a lot of work. It's not about actually mentioning them, but could you just help us whet our appetite about those 11 domains?
Well, I think well-being is such a complex phenomenon. And if we had to see well-being as being a picture where there is vibrancy and aliveness and energy and vitality and joy and freedom and all those many, many words, I could go on for half an hour on words that describe well-being. And if we have a look at that picture, it's made up of puzzle pieces. And I said there's 11 puzzle pieces that specifically make up that picture. And if even one of those puzzle pieces isn't there, then the picture is destroyed. So all of these things are integrated. So, for example, one of the domains is stress and fatigue. If you are overstressed, you won't sleep well. And if you don't sleep well, then you can forget about having personal mastery. And you can forget about having good eating, because you won't be able to eat well if you're not sleeping well. But by the same token, if you're not eating well, you won't be able to exercise well. And if you don't exercise well, you also won't be able to sleep well. And then you won't have good gut health. And so all these many, many aspects fit together in a very integral way to create the picture of well-being. And at the end of the day, it comes down to millions of little choices made every hour of every day to try to eat wisely. And I don't believe in deprivation at all. I don't believe that you should never, ever eat anything bad, or you should only eat clean, because it doesn't work. It's been proved by science 1,000,000 trillion times. Unless you're anorexic, you're going to fall off the wagon if you put yourself on such a wagon. So it's about eating well and wisely, connecting to your body and understanding what your body is longing for, not what your mind is longing for, but what your body is longing for. It's about choosing to go to bed just that little bit earlier, and not to watch Netflix until you fall asleep, but actually to have a proper sleep routine before you get into bed, and try to go to sleep so that you can sleep really, really well most of the time. And at the same time, engaging with your relationships in a really healthy way, because you'll never have well-being if you don't have healthy, happy relationships. So really working towards healthy communication, healthy to have a healthy state of intimacy in your intimate relationships, to be able to enjoy pleasure-filled and great sex, because without great sex, you won't have healthy intimate relationship, and then you won't have well-being.
Amen.
And on and on and on, and I could talk all morning, but you get the idea. It all fits together.
It all does. It really does. So thank you so much for such a great conversation. And just before I ask you where people can get more of your work and so on, imagine you are doing a closing 40 seconds, and you really want to at least invoke or provoke a bit of curiosity into the kind of work that you do. We're putting it in some shorts. You want to reach as many people as possible in a tweet, almost like TikTok fashion. What is that one statement that you'd love to leave our listeners and viewers with?
Life is an adventure. Live it fully. And in order to live it fully, get the help you need to be able to make the right choices so that you can feel the joy and vibrancy and aliveness that you deserve and enjoy the adventure of your life fully.
Oh man, that's so beautiful. And then if any of our listeners want to get in touch, what's the best way to do so? What's the best way to follow your work? If a corporate HR exec is listening, what's the best way to get in contact if they just want to explore whether some of the work can be applicable in their workplaces and so on?
Well, I think the best way, Sipiwe, is to get hold of me on my website, www.suefullagood.com. And everything, all my contact details are on there. I am, of course, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Just with my name. I think I got the perfect name for the job. Sue Feel Good. Lots of people call me Sue Full of Goodness. So it's a hard name to forget. So hopefully you can remember the name and easily find me. Sue Full of Good.
And we'll add all the links to the LinkedIn and to the website after this. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you so much for popping into organizational behavior with Sipiwe Moyo. I think we've learned so much. We are grateful for your time. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Sipiwe. I really enjoyed being here.
Hey everybody, that was another episode of Organizational Behavior with Sipiwe Moyo. We told you we always bring you great guests. I don't know why you're listening to anybody else. Thank you. See you next time.